Are you ready to unleash your full potential and become unstoppable in your success and leadership?
Welcome to the Unleashed and Unstoppable podcast, where we provide powerful insights and strategies for coaches, corporate leaders, and entrepreneurs. I'm Lianne Carter.
And I'm Carol Register, and we're certified Master Neurocoaches who are passionate about helping you overcome your limiting beliefs and optimize your performance.
Each week, we'll be sharing actionable tips and strategies using neuroscience, from interviews with industry experts to solo episodes to help you lead a life of power, purpose, and possibility on your own terms.
Join our community of like-minded individuals. Hit subscribe now, and let's be unleashed and unstoppable together. Hey, I am so excited to be here with you again. Alex and I love coming before you each week, giving you practical information about leadership and neuroscience, as well as the big picture view, right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
Today, we are definitely going to lean in for what about those times when you are tired because you are human, you're not a machine. And when something comes up that causes lag, like pregnancy, I'm going to turn it over to you, Alex, Lianne, because I know that you have some great information to share with us.
Well, it's been interesting journeys. I know we've kind of maybe mentioned over the last couple months that I am at the time of recording almost 35 weeks pregnant, and it really hones in and leans into this, when we talk about the seasons of life, right? When we talk about peak performance, we're talking about productivity, we're talking about, creation and doing and things like that. We talk about seasons of life. We talk about leaning into what's going on. And I think it's really easy when you're pregnant. I know for myself to, you are very used to operating a certain way. And
our comfort zones, right?
Yeah,
our habits.
Yeah. And I think what's fascinating with pregnancy, and it can happen with anything, is that it's unpredictable.
Yeah.
Right. You could feel this way one day and you feel like that the other day. And, I would say that in terms of like planning things out and setting things up, I was looking very much at like, okay, what did things look like with my first pregnancy? And I've heard a lot, and I know lots of moms have said, second pregnancies are different. And it's interesting to see how like, the frustrations occur, right?
Yeah.
How, especially when we talk about our brain, right? Like wanting to keep us safe, and sometimes we, signs of being tired, and being able to look at, okay, well, I am pregnant, and the body just needs more rest. The body does need some more of these things. And so
you're creating a line.
Yeah. And so leaning into that, right? And so whether or not, it's you're pregnant, or maybe you have young children, maybe, you've got maybe some
autoimmune diseases.
I was going to say that you're taking care of some of your family who are sick. Cause I know, that was something, right? Like the reality is there's the seasons of life. And as leaders and as high achievers, I'll say because I know that I'm guilty of this, of leaning into, we end up being so hard on ourselves. And then we end up going down this road of kind of self beat up versus grace.
Yeah.
Right. And just meeting, like we talk a lot of times, like with our clients, like meeting where our clients are at. This is about being able to meet yourself where you're at. And,
I love that. Yeah.
When Carol, you and I were talking earlier this week, and what you said was really powerful, which is, we've spoken a little bit before about the Pareto principle, but what you said in the moment was that even though we have the Pareto principle, which 20% of our efforts create 80% of our results, you leaned into saying something like, well, maybe it's your 10%, maybe it's your 5%. And so, for the audience today, for the listener, we wanted to lean into that because well, maybe you're pregnant just like me, right? And you're noticing that you just don't have the same energy that you had, prior to pregnancy. Maybe you have like life happening right now and things are happening right now.
Yeah.
And what does that look like? How do we embrace it? And how do we release ourselves from this pressure? How do we release ourselves from
Yeah.
this feeling like, well, we could do more, we should do more, right? It's the
Yeah.
woulds and the shoulds and the coulds piece, and being able to give yourself grace, being able to be in this moment, in this season of time, still being able to move things forward. Because I think that's what some of the challenges is, right? Like, is like still wanting to feel like you are making some sort of progress, even if it's just minimal, and being like still being happy. I think that's
Yeah.
what happened. Like, I noticed for myself, there was so much like frustration, and this is a joyful time, like especially if you're pregnant, right? This
It
needs
is.
to be a
It
joyful
is a
time.
joyful time. And yeah, I think it's so, what you're saying is so important and powerful because it really does come back to perspective.
Mhm.
And, one of the things that I know really drives me personally is that I'm a miracle every day. And that you're a miracle every day. We all are,
Yeah.
and that we matter. And it's that we have today, right?
Mhm.
So that when I feel low energy or low vibe, that is something that I really lean into. I have today. And if I'm gone tomorrow, what do I want to leave behind those that I love? What kind of things do I want them to be able to say, yeah, she really went for it till the very last moment, right? And but when we're in these times where for some reason or another our bodies are busy, in this case working on another life, or rebuilding or repairing or restoring, like we get with sleep every night. Maybe like me, you've been traveling and your sleep has been interrupted and your schedule has been interrupted. This is when we really want to become efficient and effective.
Mhm.
And being able to be efficient and effective means you can get a whole lot more done in a really shrunk down part of time. And that's possible. It happens all the time. And there's actually another principle besides Pareto principle, which is the 80-20 rule, by the way. It is called Parkinson's law. And it's that we
Mhm.
will max out the time that we have available. And it's one of the reasons that giving yourself a deadline can be very motivating. And I mean, a firm deadline where you can't wiggle out of it, not just between you, but between you and somebody else. It's a great way to do it. Maybe you have speech or something. Um, but perspective and knowing how to go back to creating from being is really
Mhm.
it. Being efficient and effective always goes back to the be. And I know that you've spoken about that just as much as I have, Alex, Lianne. So what does that look like right now for you to create from the be?
Oh, I love that question because I literally just had something come to mind as you were speaking. And what hit me was the identity in
Yeah.
this moment, right?
Mm,
So I caught
yeah.
myself earlier saying, right, like, well, it was like this with Abby's pregnancy and looking at myself in those shoes at that point. And this is a
Yeah.
different pregnancy, right? I'm a couple of years older, different life is happening. I've got a toddler running around. It's a different even time of year. So even that can impact on your energy
Yeah.
levels. And so that's what came to me is leaning into who I am right now in this moment and
Yeah.
looking at those factors to take into account and then defining on that being in this moment in this season of life and looking at those priorities.
Yeah.
Right? Like that was another thing as you're talking, Carol, right? Like it's the priorities get back into perspective, right? If you are
Yeah.
really looking at, okay, 5% of my time, which means I have, you know, maybe a handful of hours compared to maybe when I had a lot more time. What's my time, attention, energy really go to? What
Yeah.
really is the priority?
It's
And
the focus.
yeah, and
Yeah.
that's what I noticed, like, just even today, I really got, I was gonna say, kind of sort of intimate. Like, I had originally kind of mapped out thinking I would be like, I could work at a certain capacity for the next several weeks. And I'm realizing the energy just isn't there. I get to
Yeah.
rest a
And
lot more than
you
I
could give
anticipated.
birth any day. I
And
mean,
that's true, right? That is so true.
you know?
So keeping in mind, right, like the preparations for that. And so it comes back down to, yeah, those priorities and really looking at myself now.
It
So
brings
not,
clarity, doesn't it?
yeah, like not comparing to the previous pregnancy. It's looking at myself today, given my age today, how I'm feeling today, and
Yeah.
today, whether or not, as you're leaning into care, right? Because each day changes as well. Like some
Yeah.
days I have more energy than others. And so it's really getting in tune and connecting with yourself in that being and
Yeah.
connecting with you in that moment. And then looking at the priorities and really looking at, if I've got my 5% today, where does my 5% go?
Yeah.
And I think that's what you reminded me earlier this week when we were talking, was like, you're right. Because we can go into a laundry list of things, just as you're saying, like Parkinson's law. And we can also do very focused, very, laser tasks that are
Yeah.
there to,
Efficient and effective.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, I always think of the double E's. So that's definitely what came to mind, is being reminded. And because I remember experiencing this even after Abby was born. Like, oh, I wish I had the time like before, and living in the past. And what we know about neuroscience when it comes to the neuroscience of performance and leadership is it's really about, well, it's about being in the present, and it's about, being future
Yeah.
focused. So if I step into the future focus of being ready to give birth,
Yeah.
and being ready for, to have the energy and to be rested and have things ready, it shifts the perspective and that intention.
It's so powerful when that perspective shifts and the clarity, the focus, the intention. What is the Pareto principle? I just want to share with you. It is a ratio known as the 80-20 rule. And what it typically looks like in modern day life is that 80% of our activities are producing 20% of our results. Now, Pareto was an Italian man that discovered this in pea plants, and you can go read that on the internet. But the way that it boils down is you will find so many things in life are divided by 80-20, 70-30. It is a ratio. So what that means is that it can be 70-30. It can be 60-40. One of my past mentors was a man named James Wedmore, who says he wants his 5%, like you were referring to produce 95%. Now, in practical terms, this may, if you're not mathematical and you don't think that way, you may be like, oh, what are you talking about? Take 10 pennies out, them into 8 and 2, and then look at whether 8 on the 8 side, that's your activities, and it's only producing on the 2 side over here. And how can you switch that ratio around with intention, with focus, with clarity on having your 2 pennies, which will represent your activities, your 20%, produce over here on the 8 side of pennies, 80%. So it's taking 10 pennies and looking at each of those 10 pennies as representing 10%. So all 10 pennies together, if you look at them as 10%, make 100%. And so we're really looking at how do we take 2 of those pennies, 20% of everything we're doing, and cause it to produce 80%? Or because it's a ratio, how do we take 1 of those pennies, 10%, and have it produce 90%? You can break it up or down in any way that you want. But the funny thing is, I really want to activate your RAS, your reticular activating system right now, so that as you travel out into the world or in your family, you are going to start to see the 80-20 principle in action. You are going to be sitting around the dinner table with your children, and you're going to see that they ate 80% of the food and you have 20% leftovers. I mean, you are going to see that, you have 8 pink and black dresses in your closet, and you have 2 green and yellow dresses. You'll just start to see it everywhere, because it is a principle that's in nature, and the way that we take it in and use it for ourselves is exactly what Alex and I are talking about, where you start to be intentional about creating from this place of identity in the now, in the moment, with grace, without the self beat up, and you start to see that volumize, because what we focus on grows. You're going to start to see that you are able to produce a whole lot more from a whole lot less, honed in, intentional, clear focus. Yeah.
And when you're speaking into that, Carol, like it reminds me to remind the listener that sometimes what that looks like is slowing down to speed up.
Yeah.
Because you might find like your days are going out and you're noticing, okay, well, I'm not getting these things done, or I feel tired, or all of these things are happening. And then you find yourself in this reactive state of just kind of going through the motion, like just living on autopilot, feeling these pressures, feeling like, you're doing all of the things. And that's why I love even just the exercise of really sitting down to take out your pennies and really looking at that, and then connecting with those activities, right? Your daily activities, and how you're spending your week and how you're spending your time. And that's what happened. Like after Carol reminded me, I took a second to pause, and I was like, okay, really, what are the priorities over the next couple of weeks?
Yeah.
And what else can I, kind of take, either delegate or just realize, this doesn't have to be done right now. Because a lot of times we feel like we need all these things to happen right now versus just being in those moments and trusting that you are exactly where you are meant to be. And it's all going to fall into place.
I love that statement, trusting that you're exactly where you're meant to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's all going to fall into place. And I think that was some of the reminders I received this week by Carol and some other colleagues, because it has been challenging, right? And I'm not going to, right? I'm not going to
sugarcoat it.
Sugarcoat it. Like, definitely, I did not take my age into account thinking about that as a potential factor, right? Especially, if you are someone who is very go, 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 the idea of rest sometimes can feel uncomfortable. I mean, and that was our last podcast episode, right? We leaned into that, like, are you taking that time to pause and rest? And Carol and I both know, because we've experienced it. We experienced it with our clients burning out. We've both experienced the burnout ourselves.
Yeah.
And I certainly don't want to go into birth feeling burnt out, and having that reminder of just the now, of where you are, where your time, attention, and effort and energy gets to go, and how you get to be more efficient, and what the priorities are for you right now. So just that friendly reminder. I think it's always a reminder. We can always use that friendly reminder to it's a reset. It really is a reset, right?
Yeah.
And to get realigned with what's important to you in this moment, in this season of life, at this time. And how do you, in my case, right? How do I get to preserve my energy?
Yeah.
Still have it to show up and do the podcast, and then still allow myself to rest, so that I can still show up in that 5% capacity to serve and be there for my clients up until delivery.
And it really does bring it home, because what is more important than what you're doing right now, building this life? And it does take energy, it
Mhm.
takes effort. And, you hit on so many key things in that. We're going to wrap you up. We don't want to firebomb you, but it really is that slowing down to speed up, like you said, because what happens is we start to become busy. That is
Mhm.
brain safety
Yeah.
rather than productive. And that's the power of looking at things through the lens of the Pareto principle, getting really focused and state your intentions, declare them. If you're wanting to operate with 20%, like you said, it clarifies things, doesn't it?
Oh,
Really
yeah.
makes, the baby is the priority. And, what falls under that? Your toddler falls under that. Your marriage is the key thing in your life. Those relationships and what that looks like, and then how you can serve in your business, what you're doing always. We love serving you guys. We love that part. Um, yeah, just really get clear and focused, and, you know, remember that your brain will try to default you to old patterns of
Yeah.
busyness to keep you preoccupied and from actually being productive, from actually moving forward. And it's in the moments like this when we're really just slowed down, whether we like it or not, that we go, oh, yeah, aha, I can actually slow down to speed up, right? So I
And then
love
that
that.
is more productive, right?
Yeah,
But it seems counterintuitive because
yeah.
very much so we're used to society of busy, busy, busy and doing and doing and doing.
Yeah.
And I would
It's
say,
the default mode.
yeah. But as through pregnancy, I definitely will say that's probably for myself like a clear example of where the slow down and speed up is so powerful, and
Yeah.
being so per busy and super productive is counterintuitive because of the body, just that extra energy that it requires, and that
Requires.
time for rest, like even just the processing time. I was sharing with Kara earlier, like I'm not, you know there's, I guess, whether it's the pregnancy brain or whatever it is, like I'm just noticing that, I'm not as quick and sharp as I
Yeah.
I usually can be. And it
Mm.
is because it's just the body is just really using up a lot of resources at the moment, and that's okay. And
Yeah.
so I get to give myself grace, right?
Yeah. You
And
get to give yourself grace.
yeah.
Yeah.
And whatever season of life that you're in, whether you are pregnant or you're having to take care of a loved one, or you have other things that are going on, you've got immuno immunocompromise, or you're dealing with health things, that getting realigned with whatever that's important to you, your 5%, your 20%, and
Yeah.
then just, you know, little by little, day by day, right? Like the domino effect of those little action steps each day will add up to big results in the end. And I think that's what's really
Yeah.
great, because we get caught up in needing to do so many things, and it really doesn't need to be that way. Like it gets to
Yeah.
be actually quite simple, and you can have such a bigger impact when you're more focused and more honed in, and you're in with that intention,
Yeah.
and you're in connection with who you are in this moment, so that you can
Yes.
operate from that being, as you said earlier, Kara, right? In this
Yeah.
moment that you are, versus, in the past. And
In the future even can be overwhelming at
yeah,
times.
yeah. So just get
And
grounded where
always
you are.
remembering too that your brain's job is to keep that beautiful automated system you have, that sophisticated system, safe. And it will pull out all the stops to do so. And one of the stops it'll pull out is keeping you busy and distracted. Because if you're moving in a new area of being productive or being laser focused, and that's not your habit, then that's not going to feel safe to the brain. It's going to be unfamiliar. But when you can recognize that on the neuroscience side of things, and you can just do exactly what you're saying, Alex. Take a deep breath, know that you're exactly where you should be. Everything is exactly where it should be, and that you're going to have a greater impact by slowing down, by moving over to the 20% of all of your activities, producing 80% of your results.
And the sigh of relief that you get afterwards, right? Like,
yeah.
My word for this year is simplicity. And I have to say that that's been such a gift to lean into, like keeping it really simple. And when
Yeah.
you lean into that simplicity, you realize like first, like just the clarity of like, hey, this is what the priorities are. And then just
Yeah.
that sigh of relief because you've been able to release from other types of pressures or other things that you felt like you had to do. And it gets
Yeah.
so clear of like really where you get to spend your time and where you get to take action on. And I just it's to me, it is. It's like, it was so relieving. You're like, oh, okay, that's it. Right. And then it allows our
Yeah.
brain to release that any overwhelm that might be creeping up because you're
Yeah.
feeling like you have all these things. And it just, yeah, I mean, works on so many levels, right? Of the
So,
the
I'm not
neuroscience.
I'm not looking at our calendar, but just so you guys know, that Alex Lianne is giving birth here really soon. And so I'm just sending out a request that you hold her high in this process and send her your love and your energy for the birthing process. And yeah, I just am really looking for all of that love and energy coming in for you, Alex.
Well, thank you, Carol. And thank you to the listeners as well. I'm receiving and feeling all the love from all of you all. So thank you.
Ciao for now.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Unleashed Unstoppable podcast with your hosts, Alexandra Carter and Carol Register.
If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review and subscribe.
That's all for this episode, Wildly Ambitious Leaders. See you next week.